afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the hearing to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Cynthia Stevens and I'll be chairing today's hearing. To my far left is Mr. Brent McIntyre and to my immediate left is Mr. Jeff Peich. Our assessor today is Ms. Sharon Tang and our secretary is Ms. Katie Sutherland. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and it is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And if you have your phone with you, please make sure it's on silent. And Katie, you can swear them in, please. Welcome, Mr. Reimer.
Thank you.
So do you swear or affirm? Okay, so please state your name. Sharon King. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you. So please state your name. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Katie. So the first property on this afternoon's docket is 1524 Erin Street. So Ms. Tang, when you are ready.
File number is 19-2959. Roll number is 130105230000. Address is 1524 Erin Street. The assessed value for 2020 is $1,767,000. The parcel use is INWWH warehouse. Effective year built is between 1953 to 1975. Wall height is 14 to 20 feet. Zoning is M2 manufacturing general. The plan area is 36,064 square feet, and land to plan ratio is 1.07. And we would like to make a recommendation for this property. So we would like to use $4.04 per square foot for rent, and that gives us a potential rent of $145,518. Then we use 6% vacancy, $3.75 for shortfall, 2% expense, and that gives us an NOI of $125,937. Then we use 8.3% cap rate, and that gives us a total assessed value of $1,517,000.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Reimer, are you in?
We're in agreement with $1,517,000.
Okay, thank you. Next property on the docket is 1364 Clifton Street, and you can proceed, Ms. Taylor, when you're ready.
File number is 19-3561. Roll number is 130105352000. Address is 1364 Clifton Street. The assessed value for 2020 is $773,000. The parcel use is INWWH warehouse. Effective year built is 1971. Wall height is 14 feet. Zoning is M3 manufacturing heavy. Plan area is 11,890 square feet. And land to plan ratio is 2.15. And we would also like to make a recommendation for this property as well. So we will use actual rent of $4.80 per square foot, and that gives us a potential rent of $58,234. And we use 6% vacancy, $3.75 for shortfall, 2% expense, and that gives us an NOI of $50,915.
50,915?
$50,915.
50, okay.
And we use 7.7% cap rate, and that gives us $661,000.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reimer.
We're in agreement with 661,000.
Thank you. Okay, the next property is 1574 Erin Street. You can proceed when you're ready. Yes, you can proceed.
Would I be able to give up the pictures of the property?
I don't object at all.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Sure, yes, Katie, can you take the pictures? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, you can proceed when you're ready.
File number is 19-2735. Roll number is 13010510100. Address is 1574 Erin Street. The assessed value for 2020 is $751,000. Parcel use is INWWH warehouse. Effective year built is 1956. Wall height is 14 feet. Zoning is M2 manufacturing general and M3 manufacturing heavy. So plan area is 9,825 square feet. Land to plan area ratio is 1.96. Page 2 and page 3 of my brief shows the overhead view of the subject property. Page 4 and 5 shows the shows the income and expense information submitted by the management company. And the bottom of page 5 shows a rent of $6.80 that is being paid by the tenant. And page 6 is the comparables for the subject property. And we can see that the rent, sorry, I just want to make a correction for 1344 Spruce Street. The rent that we had in the system was only based on the area on the main floor, but actually the rent was based, the income was actually based on the main floor plus the basement area. So after the revision, the rent for this property should be $6.25 per square foot instead. So we can see the range for the rent range between $4.50 to $6.67 per square foot for the area. Page 7 of my brief shows the comparables in relation to the subject property. And page 8 of my brief shows the calculation for the valuation. So we use $6.63 per square foot for rent, and that gives us $65,140. Then we use 6% vacancy, 2% expense, and $3.75 for shortfall, and that gives us a net operating income of $57,796. Then we use 7.7% cap rate, and that gives us $751,000. that is my presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Renner, questions?
Just one question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Tang, this is then model-driven all the way through the valuation, correct?
That is correct.
Thanks, Madam Chair. That's my only question.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no question.
Mr. Pych?
I have none, thank you.
And the photographs that you handed out, are did you do an inspection of this? Is that?
Yes, we
Yes.
only did the inspection
Okay.
after the previous ordeal.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Thanks,
Proceed.
Madam Chair. Yes, indeed. And in fairness to Ms. Tang, I'd only been able to get an arrangement for the two of us to inspect after the filing date, so hence the submission now. So if I could ask the board to keep Ms. Tang's brief on page 8 open and turn to our brief on page 9. Certainly the differences are actually exceedingly small in this case. The rent in place as of the reference date, and Ms. Tang had alluded to it, so the actual rent in place is based on a rate of $6.75 a square foot applied to a slightly larger area that they reported. But that then total potential rent based on that 2013 lease is $67,560, and that's what we've applied, as you see on page 9. That is actually just a touch higher than what the model had predicted, so we're a couple thousand higher on the rent. And this all then comes down to, we don't disagree with 6% nor the 2% in itself as the structural allowance or the shortfall or the cap. So the issue then at hand is the inclusion of restoration of the 5% not for non-recoverables. That is the only difference in the valuation. And so for all the reasons that we've discussed, and I know that everyone in this room is very familiar with it, we continue to believe that the 5% should be restored as an appropriate non-recoverable expense allowance. We believe that that was the original intent of the allowance as opposed to a quote-unquote management fee recovery as advanced by the assessor. So we're asking for the 5% to be restored, and then with that, the inclusion of that 5%, our value comes in slightly lower, as you can see on our page 9, at $738,000. So that is our request this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Tang, any questions?
I guess just one question. So according to the income expense information that was provided in my brief as well as your brief, the net operating income is $68,777.01, which is a lot higher compared to your calculation of $56,809. So I'm just wondering, how would you justify that?
Oh, that's a simple matter, Madam Chair. It's of course, this reported income, and it's exactly right, there's no disputing it. It's based on 100% occupancy and 100% recovery of all the operating costs every year, and of course, that's not realistic. In our evaluation, we applied the shortfall rate, vacancy rate, we applied the shortfall, and in the case of the department's position, the 2% for structural allowances, we're suggesting the 5% for non-recoverables, such as the leasing commissions that would have been incurred in this case when the tenant was brought in 2013. So that, notwithstanding the difference in that particular year, certainly an investor is not going to assume 100% occupancy nor 100% recovery of their operating costs every year. So that's the difference.
I'd like to hand out the rebuttal evidence for the 5%.
Yes, yeah, Kate, if you can pick up the rebuttal, but we'll do the rebuttal after we've done questions with Mr. Rammer, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, did you have any other questions? No, sir. Okay, Mr. Pych? Mr. McIntyre?
Aye.
And I don't either, so now you can do the rebuttal.
So in Auto's group's evidence, I think the reason that they are including the 5% expense is because they're including leasing, commission, tenant inducement, tenant improvement allowances, and free rent. So we have attached, I guess, municipal board decisions on page 5, indicating that tenant improvements, leasing commission, and leasing incentives are not expenses, which should not be included in the calculation. So we don't think 5% the extra 5% should be allowed.
That's your presentation. Okay, Mr. Reimer, any questions on that?
Ms. Ting and board members, if I could refer you to page 6 of this rebuttal document. So Ms. Ting, page 6 at the bottom paragraph, I gather that in the department, what it states is we do not dispute that these items, the non-recoverable items that Altus is suggesting, we don't dispute that these items are, however, considered non-recoverable expenses in the appraisal theory, as we've indicated in our submission. But then going on, the exclusion of these items would form a jurisdictional exception in the QSPAP standards. So I take it the department is not disputing the expenses are properly accounted for in appraisal literature, correct? I'm going to suggest, Ms. Ting, to help you out, I'm going to suggest that's been, the wording here has been fairly established. That's a position the department's been taking.
That is correct.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, you know what, with Ms. Ting, I'm not going to ask more questions, but I'll have a bit to say about this in response.
Okay. Mr. McIntyre, any questions on the budget?
I have no questions.
I have none, thank you.
Okay, I have none either. So would you like any summary on this? No.
I would
You
like
would.
to comment on
Yes.
this since it's been filed now. So that paragraph that I referred the board and Ms. Ting to on page 6 really encapsulates the positions of the parties. We're suggesting as I mentioned, and as the board's aware, the leasing commissions, the advertising, marketing, the professional fees, those all properly form a deduction that should be made. The department's certainly agreeing that is part of appraisal theory. What they're saying is municipal board decisions effectively have carved out a jurisdictional exception. That, however, I suggest is not the case. When we go through these municipal orders that are attached, what the agents were doing in every case in those decisions was to calculate an NER, net effective rent. So they were saying, okay, there's free rent, there's all these tenant inducements, and there's all of these other inducements that were provided to this tenant to get them in. We're going to take dollar for dollar every single one of those off the top line rent to basically get, in an example, from a $14 face rate, a net rent, but a face net rent, to something probably closer to a $10 net effective rent after taking all those things off. We are specifically not doing that. That we have no qualms whatsoever. That is a methodology that cannot be used, and we are not using that methodology. Rather, what we're saying is the 5% is a stabilized allowance as provided for in the appraisal literature, as previously provided for by the department, to cover these things off. In some years, as you recall from our study, there's some years when those kind of expenses, especially with the leasing commissions, can approach 30%. There's some years when it's going to be 0. So there's a whole lot of fluctuation depending specifically on the timing of the renewals and the new tenants that are secured and the substantial leasing costs, and then some of the other advertising, marketing, and professional fees, which are typically pretty stable from year to year. By way of example, in these municipal board decisions, I've seen this document many times before, and I usually bring my version, which has got all the little floppy-eared Post-it notes on it, so I don't have that one with me, so I'm going to just go to an example I know of. So, page 17, now I think the rebuttal, the attachments start at page 1 again. Yes, they do. So on this rebuttal document of the attachments, the attachment page 17. So this is one of the municipal orders that the department is suggesting would support their approach. It's order number A99026, LACCO Company. And in this case, this is typically what's happening. On page 17, paragraph number 4 in the middle, the assessor didn't permit any deduction for tenant inducements. The owner's agent says it was necessary to offer tenant inducements, leasehold improvements, or money for leaseholds and other free rent and such, or in some cases free rent simply to commence tenancy. So the agent says the board's past policy is wrong, and they're saying we want those taken off dollar for dollar off the top line. What the board said then on page 18 under tenant inducements is the board reiterates that tenant inducements, leasing commissions, and leasing incentives are not expenses which may be used to reduce income for the purposes of calculating market value. It has been the practice of the board it has not been the practice of the board to allow these expenses, and the board is satisfied these items should be treated as expenses. So again, in order to understand the context, this is what they're saying is you can't effectively calculate an NER, because as soon as you calculate an NER, if everything else has been done based on face net rents, you've got apples and oranges, and the valuations there's no equity as between the valuations. That again is not what we're doing, but look at what the board goes on to do then. So if you turn to page 20, and this is our very point. On page 20, there's a 5% management allowance at the bottom of that page in their valuation. And that's exactly what we're suggesting in our case. We're not using these dollar for dollar to take off the net face rent in our income valuation. We are simply using that same 5% allowance that the boards have used in the past. And the positions in this board order are typical of what was going on in the past. And again, we're very much distinguishing ourselves from, and want to stress, we're not calculating any errors. We're accepting that board direction, but we're certainly saying a 5% stabilized allowance, as the board had been ordering. At the same time, they were saying you can't use them you can't take those off the top line, the rent figure, at the same time applying the 5% as we're doing here, and request the board restore the allowance accordingly. And if we could have that comment, all those comments carried forward to when it comes up for the rest of the hearing, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the next property is 1344 Spruce Street. We're dealing with amount of assessed value. And Ms. Tay, you can proceed when you're ready.
File number is 19-2552. Roll number is 13004117000. Address is 1344 Spruce Street. The assessed value for 2020 is $548,000. Parcel use is INWWH warehouse. Effective year built is between 1961 to 1978. Wall height is 12 to 16 feet. Zoning is M2 manufacturing general. Planned area is 5,453 square feet. Land to planned area ratio is 6.53. And we would like to make a recommendation on this property. We will use $6.25 for rent, and that gives us a potential rent of $44,781. Then we use 6% vacancy, $3.75 for shortfall, 2% expense, and that gives us an NOI of $39,640. Then we use 7.7% cap rate, and that gives us a total valuation of $515,000.
515?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ryman?
We're in agreement with 515,000.
Next property is 1112 Notre Dame Avenue. Dealing with amount of assessed value, and you can proceed when you're ready.
I would also like to give pictures of the property.
You okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. King, you can proceed.
File number is 19-3578. Roll number is 13012577000. Address is 1112 Notre Dame Avenue. The assessed value for 2020 is $471,000. Parcel use is INWWH. Effective year built is 1956. Wall height is 12 feet. Zoning is C1 Con neighborhood. Planned area is 5,907 square feet. The land to planned area ratio is 1.67. And page 2 and page 3 of my brief shows the picture of the separate property. Page 4 and 5 shows the income and expense information submitted by the owner. And we have a sale in 2003 that shows the sale price was $205,000. Page 6 of my brief shows the comparables, and we can see that the rent ranged between $4.50 to $7.75. And page 7 of my brief shows the comparables in relation to the subject property. And page 8 of my brief shows the calculation for the sales value. So due to the fact that there is a portion of the property that was being leased out to the owner's friend, we separate the calculation based on the two space. So the owner occupied space is 4,500 square feet, and we use $6.25 per, it's $6.25. And for the area that was leased out, that was 1,440 square feet, we use $6.71 per square foot. And that gives us an average of $6.36 per square foot for the whole building. And that works out to be $37,787 for potential rent. And we use 6% vacancy, 2% expense, $3.75 for the shortfall, and that gives us $33,473 for net operating income. Then we use 7.1% cap rate, and that gives us $471,000. And that is mine.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, questions?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So Ms. Tang, this property's been valued as a warehouse, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And on your page 1, then, we can agree that on a few things, I imagine, that the property was constructed in 1956, an older property.
Yes,
And the wall height of this building is 12 feet, correct?
that's correct.
Okay. And the land to building ratio in this case is very low at 1.67 to 1, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, just briefly, and I won't dwell on it because there's not much difference, but there is a little. So if we turn to page 6, and recall that we agreed, and that's my understanding as well, the wall height is 12 feet. So with these industrial comparables that you've got, comparables number 1, 2, and the last one, I guess it's number 5, those are the comparables with wall heights that are similar to the subject, correct?
Yes,
And they range between 450 a foot and 667 a foot, correct?
yes.
Oh. Thanks, Madam Chair, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Mr. Pike?
Thank you.
I just said the cap rate on this one, so we had another 1956 building a couple of properties ago, and the cap was 7.7, and this is coming in at 7.1. Is this gonna, any sense of the reason for that? Is it the area, they look like they're sort of in the same region? This is all model driven, right, correct?
That is
Yeah.
correct. And I think it might also because the square footage.
The square footage, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
This is smaller, I'm assuming, right?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's all I had. Mr. Reimer, you can proceed, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Your question, cap rate is one of the issues in this case, and yes, this is just a stone's throw from, so all the properties in the docket this afternoon are in that sort of Erin Wall Spruce area, and this is at the corner, just a little bit east on Notre Dame, but very close to the other properties we're looking at in the docket this afternoon. If I could ask the board to turn initially to our page 9, just to frame the differences. So we are suggesting in our valuation this afternoon a market rent of $6 a square foot for both the units. And Mrs. Tang had actually made the statement, and it's exactly right, that video promotions, that 1,200-foot unit, that is leased, when we inspected, the owner was very upfront and said that's basically leased to a buddy of mine on a month-to-month basis. So it's, while there is a lease in place and he's collecting a gross rent for it, it's a situation that, it seems to be quite casual overall and not a typical landlord and tenant relationship. So what we've suggested, the department's model had predicted a total net market rent of $37,787. So as you can see in our evaluation, we're at $34,200 based on $6 a foot. The $6 a square foot, if you turn briefly to our page 7, and we've got a chart with 16 properties that we consider to be reasonably comparable in the area. Again, these are all sort of in the wall, or most of them are in the wall, church, Aaron Clifton areas. And they range, as you see there, from $451 a foot up to $750 a foot. Comparables number 1, 2, and 4 are significantly larger. But I do note, as I mentioned, this particular building has a very low wall height, and for the overwhelming majority of industrial users, it certainly wouldn't be ideal nor even functional. At only 12 feet, it's not something that would command a high rent. So we're suggesting the $6 rate, because overall the proportion of office in this building, like for the main unit, proportion of office relative to the warehouse storage areas is a little higher than normal. So but for that, we'd be certainly looking at something closer to 450 or maybe 475. But because of that higher proportion of office finish, which is probably in the range of 50 to 55%, then we're suggesting the $6 rate. So with the $6 rate, then, if we can go back to our page 9, we are not disagreeing with the 6% vacancy, and the parameters as shown there. We have restored the non-recoverable/management, forgot to change the title there, but that 5% allowance. And we're suggesting a capitalization rate in this case of 7.5% rather than the 7.1%. So again, I won't go through it in detail, but I'll refer the board to our capitalization rate study. And in this case, certainly the property would be viewed as something that would be very much closer to a non-investment grade. In fact, this isn't an investment grade product. So if I can ask the board members and Ms. Tang to turn to our page 13 of the capitalization rate study. So you can see at the top of that page, there's a chart with some capitalization rates that we derived for in connection with these transactions. These properties are all significantly superior to the subject. You can see in some cases the ages, and in all cases the wall heights. And certainly the conclusions we've come to at the bottom in this small chart is for the top quality investment grade assets, and there's very few of them, between 6.25 and 7%. For the B quality products, between 7 and 7.75, and for non-investment grade 8+. Now in this case, I've applied 7.5%, and the reason I've done that is certainly the application of the $6 market rent to some extent would reflect the fact that the building is at the lower quality. So the 7.5% we believe is appropriate when one looks at the entire valuation, and then that comes in at a value of $382,000. So for all of those reasons, we're requesting a reduction from $471,000 to $382,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tang, any questions?
Okay, so on your page 7,
Yes.
so you mentioned that video promotions has 1,200 square feet.
That's what we understand, yes indeed.
Under income expense information on page 21 of your brief, they reported 1,400.
Oh, they did too, you're right. That of course would result in a lower overall gross rent and a lower net rent, but in any event, we're not using it. We didn't believe it was reflective of market, so it wouldn't change my opinion, but yes, it would change the allocation.
Okay. And then another question is that you mentioned that this business is month-to-month lease, but do you know how long they've been there for?
Video promotions?
Yes.
At least since 2017, as per the mailer. So if you look at our page, again, our page 21, this is a mailer dated December 31st of 2017. So they were, at a minimum, they were in there at that point. I'm not sure how much earlier than that. Again, Ms. Kang, I'd say not much turns on it because we're not using that. The net rate there was less than $4 a foot, and we're not using that rate.
Right, but are you aware that they are being assessed for business taxes since 2005?
Okay.
Well, I guess my point is that even though you were saying that there's is month to month and there's a risk associated to that, but I'm just trying to say that and they have been there for a long period of time, and it's pretty stable.
I'm not suggesting that the 7.5% is based on a risk inherent with that tenancy. I'm not suggesting that at all. The risk in this case is there's a land to building ratio of only 1.67 to 1. That's totally inadequate. There's a low wall height of 12 feet. That's entirely inadequate. And it's an older building, so certainly legally. I'm treating that, whether it's 1,200 or 1,400 feet, I'm almost ignoring that in my evaluation. Not suggesting that that presents an additional risk factor. It's the nature of this asset, the physical nature of this asset, and very dysfunctional characteristics that would, I'd suggest, mandate a 7.5% cap rate in this case.
So when you mentioned that those are insufficient, are you just talking about it's insufficient for industrial properties?
1.67 to 1 is insufficient for almost all uses. There's extremely limited parking, so for a retail use, retail operators will typically want something closer to 3.5 to 4 to 1. Industrial users will typically want something closer to 4 to 1. So this operator is certainly making it work, but when you're talking about what an investor is going to perceive this asset, this is a very low quality asset for those reasons.
And for your rent comparable, the comparables that you have, other than, well, okay, so for all the comparables that you have here, which one would you say that is most similar to the subject property?
In terms of the ages, it would be comparable, ages and wall heights, it would be the last 4 or 5 comparables. So wall height is a significant driving factor for the rents you're gonna get. So there's no property in our comparables that's got a 12-foot wall height, so the subject is significantly inferior to any of these in that respect. But knowing the properties on Clifton and Aaron Street, they are most comparable to those. They're also older and low wall heights.
Okay, so for the traffic count, would you say that these locations are not as good as the subject property? Because this one is right on Notre Dame, and there's a lot more traffic.
Ms. Ting, for an industrial property, traffic count is not only irrelevant, it's actually a hindrance. Because if you're loading and unloading and trying to run your industrial warehouse operation, you don't want to be on a major thoroughfare where that's going to interfere with your warehouse operations.
But wouldn't you agree that zoning for this property is C1 instead of M2 or
For sure
M1?
it is, but we're valuing an industrial property. That was my point about the industrial use. So the retail, what I'm giving this property the benefit of the doubt is if someone else were to come in there and convert it to a retail kind of use, that is the potential upside for the property, and that would, for the same reasons I'm talking about with a very low land to building ratio, if you're a retail use, the 12-foot wall height's not an issue. The 1.67 to 1 land to building ratio most certainly is. So it's not ideal, and it still is the older building. So I'd suggest, Ms. Tang, that traffic count, if you're going to convert it from warehouse to retail, would be a factor. It would certainly, my valuation already reflects, I'd suggest, a degree of optimism that takes that into account.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have a redirect for Ms. Tang. This property is on C1 zoned land, correct?
Yes.
Then how much of the space is truly warehouse space, square footage?
I don't think there's a lot. I would say about 1,000 square feet to
So then it's-
1,500 square feet,
So then it's predominantly office retail?
pretty much.
I disagree. If you recall from my comments earlier, I'd suggested it was about a 50-50 split. I think it's greater than 1,000. Certainly, it's not a 15% storage. I think that, or 1,000 square feet, 15 to 16%, I think that's a little bit light.
Did you inspect it?
Yeah, we both were there earlier this week. Exactly.
There's two different opinions.
Yeah, if you look at
I could
photos.
see if it was 10 years ago, but.
Yeah, no, if you look at the photos, and Ms. Tang's provided them, and they're a fair representation, that's why I say it's, the $6 rate, certainly, if this was a typical office warehouse where you've got, 15 to 30% office finish, that would have directly impacted my rental rate, but from what I saw, I'm gonna suggest, it was, 50-50, maybe 60-40 office to warehouse / storage. But I wouldn't agree that there's 1,000 square feet of alone of storage and warehouse based on these photographs and what we saw.
Okay, because what I was trying to get at was why it's considered an industrial warehouse, given the zoning and given
Yeah,
the makeup of it, but
I think that's I would agree that's a fair question.
it just seems out of place on that,
Yeah,
in that location.
I would agree with that.
My question is for you, Mr. Reimer. Is on page 8. The shortfall you indicated is 375, except on your workup, you've got 360.
And so I do, that's from last cycle. I'm gonna stand by it rather than adjust it to 375.
Okay. Thank you, that was all my questions.
Good eye for detail.
So, just, since you've been recently in there, so the 12-foot wall height, does that run through the whole property? Is the office wall height a little lower?
No,
It's all 12?
It's all 12. I mean, there's, like you can see in the photos, there's tile ceiling, like suspended
Yeah,
tile. So the actual floor to the tile is gonna be lower than that, but
yes.
the wall height is
Well,
consistent.
the actual wall height, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And what are they doing here?
So Crystal Sound is occupying the majority of the building. They're DJs /
Oh, so they've got equipment that they're
Yeah,
renting out and
yeah,
taking out?
Yeah, exactly. And then the other area, either 12 or 1,400 feet, they reported 1,400. That's basically a buddy of the owner, and that was, as I recall, virtually 100% office. He was just using it for storage, quite frankly. It was kind of cluttered and such, but at its
Set up
heart, it
like
was an
office
office.
space?
It was an office area, yeah.
Okay. Any requirement for summation on this property? Ms. Reimer, no? Okay, thank you. Next item is 1 Point Douglas Avenue, dealing with amount of assessed value.
File number is 19-3774. Roll number is 13091700000. Address is 1 Point Douglas Avenue. The assessed value for 2020 is $1,514,000. Parcel use is INWWH warehouse. Effective year built is 1956 to 1966. Wall height is between 18 to 20 feet. Zoning is M2 manufacturing general. Plun area is 41,725 square feet. The land to plun area ratio is 2.91. And we would like to make a recommendation based on land value only. The structure is not in a good condition. So our recommendation is based on $7.03 per square foot for land, and that gives us a total land value of $854,000.
Is your workup in here done on the income approach?
Yes.
It was, okay. And is the land value workup in here, or is it just what you just presented now?
Just what we
Okay.
presented, yeah,
Okay.
because I just inspected the property this morning, and I got a chance to talk
Oh,
to
you just
them.
inspected today?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Reimer?
We're agreeing with 800 and, we're agreeing with the value presented and just, what was it, 800?
54.
Yeah, we're agreeing with 854, and for the board's reference, page 7 of our materials has the land sales that because we valued it as land.
Oh, you did, okay.
So it has, for the comfort of the board and for the board's reference, there is a chart with the land sales that we suggested there, and we're agreeing that the recommended value falls within that range. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions by?
No, the only one I had was the land sales and Mr. Reimer's answer.
Yeah, so good, okay. Thank you. property is 1975 Logan Avenue. You can proceed when you're ready. Yep, thanks.
File number is 19-4217. Roll number is 070910131000. Address is 1975 Logan Avenue. The assessed value for 2020 is $1,187,000. The parcel use is INWWH warehouse. Effective year built is 1961. Wall height is 12 to 16 feet. Zoning is M1 manufacturing light. Plan area is 16,588 square feet. The land to plan ratio is 1.66. And we would also like to make a recommendation for this property. We would like to use $5.20 per square foot. And that gives us a potential rent of $86,258. Then we use 6% vacancy, $3.75 for shortfall, 2% for expense, and that gives us a net operating income of $75,728. Then we use 8.3% coverage, and that gives us $912,000. If you turn to page 2 and 3 of my brief, that shows the picture of the subject property. So if you're looking on page 2, 1975 Logan, the far left section of the building, it has no HVAC systems. So there's no heat, no AC, no water. So 1975 and 1963, the other two portion of the building has the regular heat, water, and hydro. Page 4 and 5 of page 4 of my brief shows the income and expense information submitted by the subject property by the owner. For page 5, there was a sale in 2016. The sale price was $820,000. And page 6 of my brief shows the comparables for the subject property. And you can see the range between $4.50 to $6.50. And page 7 of my brief shows the comparables in relation to the subject property. And page 16 and 17 of my brief shows the picture of the subject property. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, the recommendation was $912,000. Are you in agreement with that?
We still have to proceed, thank
You'd
you.
like to proceed? Okay, thank you. So you may ask your questions.
So the narrows have become very, or the issues have become very narrow though. Ms. Tang, remind me, the recommendation, is that based on 5.25 square foot?
520.
520, okay. Just one question really, the transaction in September 16th, we can agree that was the neighbor part with the big manufacturing plant that bought this property, correct?
That is correct.
Thanks, Madam Chair, that's my only question.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Peitsch?
I'm sorry, I missed some of your numbers. The NOI on your recommendation is?
$75,728.
And 20?
28.
28, I'm sorry, all right. And that's based on a 6% vacancy, 3.75 shortfall, 2% expense?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what was your cap?
8.3%.
No other questions, thank you.
I missed, the one number I missed was your total rent with the 520. What was your,
Potential rent?
your potential rent, yes?
$86,258.
258, thank you. And I don't think I have any other questions, so Mr. Reimer, you can proceed.
Madam Chair, may I have just 1 minute, please? So, If we could please turn to page 9 of our brief. So the valuation now has become, the issue has become really, there's a slight difference in the potential rent from $5 that I'm suggesting to $5.20 suggested by Ms. Tang. I'm certainly of the view that the $5 rate in the context of this property makes sense. And the other significant issue is the non-recoverables. So for the reasons I've suggested previously, I'm asking for the restoration of the non-recoverables. If the board could make a note of this, because it really, it has become quite a narrow debate. If one takes the revised NOI that Ms. Tang had suggested, which was $75,728, and if you remove the non-recoverable expense that we're suggesting should be restored, that NOI would then be $71,834 after the removal of the 5% that we're suggesting, and at an 8.3 cap, the value, indicated value would be $865,000.
Sorry, can you say what the revised NOI is?
It would be $71,834, and so that capped at 8.3% is $865,000. The reason, so there's not a lot of difference there. I'd certainly suggest that would represent the very upper limit in this case, and the reason I'm sticking with the $827,000, that sale, and I've also referenced that sale in our materials, that was, or purchase I should say, that was a purchase by the owner of the significant industrial manufacturing plant that's right beside it, Cart International. So that's purchase price of $820,000. I'm going to suggest when you've got the larger landowner trying to buy out the smaller landowner, that's likely got a premium built into it. So it was a September 2016 sale, or purchase I should say, and the sale, I'll just make if the board wants to make a note, the sale questionnaire relating to the transaction is located at my pages 19 and 20. So I'm suggesting the $820,000 really should represent a very, very strong baseline value. That then taken as the baseline, if you run through my calculations on page 9, I come in at $827. If you, as I've suggested in the alternate, if you take Ms. Tang's revised NOI and then take off our 5% allowance, then you're at $865. So I'll leave it with the board. Certainly something in that range I believe would be appropriate in all the circumstances. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tang, any questions?
So on page 20 of your brief for the sales information,
Yes.
so it shows that the purchaser made a cash payment of $820,000.
Yes.
That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pike,
I have nothing.
Mr. McIntyre.
And I have no questions, thank you.
Oh, the rent, did you have rent comps? Oh,
I do.
we're so close,
I
I guess
didn't-
it's not
that's why I
really-
didn't
Yeah,
plan
you
it,
know what,
but-
never mind. I just,
Page 7 if you're
yeah,
interested.
I just realized how close you are, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any need for summation on this property?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next property is 1995 Logan Avenue, dealing with amount of assessed value. And you can proceed when you're ready.
Are they going to have the floor plan for the property?
Are you okay with the floor plan?
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
file number is 19-4216. Road number is 0756907640. Address is 1995 Logan Avenue. The assessed value for 2020 is $4,973,000. Parcel use is INWWH warehouse. The effective year built is, if you turn to page 2 of my brief, that shows the breakdown of the building built at different stages. So the overall year built for the property is 1977. Wall height is between 13 feet to 27 feet. Zoning is M1 manufacturing light. Plun area is 108,142 square feet. Land to plun area ratio is 2.85. And page 3 of my brief shows the picture of the subject property. And so is page 4. Page 5 shows the income and expense information submitted by the owner. Page 7 of my brief shows the comparable for the subject property, which we can see the rent range between $2 per square foot to $6.53. Page 8 of my brief shows the comparables in relation to the subject property. And page 9 of my brief shows the calculation for the assessed value. So we use $4.50 per square foot, and that gives us $473,814 for potential rent. Then we use 6% vacancy, 2% expense, $3.75 for shortfall, and that gives us $412,786 for net operating income. Then we use 8.3% coverage, and that gives us a total of $4,973,000. And page 17 to page 19 of my brief shows the picture of the subject property. And that is my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Runner, questions?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, Ms. Tang, on page 2, please. So yeah, the total area that we got for all, and the building, we can agree the building, obviously not the building, but the improvements were built in stages since 1962, correct? Actually, I have 1958, so these are effective ages then? For the
That is
new
correct,
buildings. Oh, okay. So the effective age of the original structure, which was built in 58, you've listed it as 62, 46,847 square feet with only a 13-foot wall height. We can agree that's, and you'll have to trust me if you haven't done the math, that's 43% of the total building area, correct? Or thereabouts? Feel free to
Yes.
calculate it if you're not sure.
It's about that,
Okay.
yes.
And we can further agree, if you look down then from 1976 and earlier, if you add in the 39,000 to the other smaller buildings, and again, please, Ms. Tang, feel free to do the math if you wish to do so. I calculate the total area of the improvements that were constructed in 1976 or earlier as upwards of 80%.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, in that context then, if we can turn briefly to page 7. So our reference date is April 1 of 18, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the four comparables, the last four comparables will be closer to the reference date than the first one, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So the second last comparable, 1345 Redwood, that's the bowling plant on Redwood, correct?
Yes.
And that was a renewal of the lease that Boeing had in a much newer property that was effective year built of 1990, correct?
Yes.
So of the last four comparables, that building would be, I'm going to suggest to you that building would be considered significantly superior to the subject. Would you agree with that?
Yes, we use a $4.50.
Certainly. But then what you're left with, Ms. Tang, you've got the comparable on Barrie, it's a lot larger. It's roughly 48,000, or I guess 40,000 square feet larger, at $2 a square foot. And you've got Fife Street, that wall height of 31 feet, that's significantly superior than the majority of the subject, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Sargent is a wee bit smaller, 76,000 feet, at 332 a square foot, correct?
Yes, but I just want to point out that 820 Berry Street, I don't think there's any office space in that building.
At $2 a foot, I totally believe you. That's a low rate. I would not certainly, it wouldn't surprise me. Thanks, Madam Chair, those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Mr. Pike?
Just wondering about the 820 Berry Street, is that an arm length lease, or is there some further information you have on that? Because it seems very low.
I don't have any information, but I think that is just a parking lot.
Ah,
So there's no, like, I don't think there's any administrative stuff on site. When people go in there to park their, it's right out to Park and Fly, so people would just park their vehicle there and then they would take off and then fly to a different
I see, okay.
destination. So, so in order for them to get in, I think they would have to have certain information or some sort of access that they can scan, and then so they would just go in there by themselves.
I see, okay. No questions, thanks.
Oh, so it's just used to park vehicles?
Yes, that's
Okay,
right,
got
yeah.
it. Okay. That
Very
somewhat makes
explains
sense of that.
it. Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, and that's all the questions I had, so Mr. Reimer, please proceed.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that $2 rate seems low to me as well, so I'm not suggesting that that's in any way comparable to the subject. I do, however, suggest that 1855 Sargent and Fife are comparable. Fife is superior with its much higher wall height, but that would indicate a range of between 332 a foot and 450. I'm going to suggest in our submission, as you'll see shortly, a rate of that is at 4 1/4. So that's really the issue, along with the non-recoverable fees. If I could ask the board members, Ms. Tang, to turn to page 4 initially, please. So this is the property, when I mentioned in the previous hearing, it was the neighbor with the large manufacturing plant that bought that property. This is that plant. This is the cart manufacturing, or cart industrial plant. So this property consists of improvements that were built in various stages between 1958 and 2007. The original building, 1958 building, as you can see in the chart there, that's the one with the very low wall height of only 13 feet. That represents fully 43% of the total area. Then the next section is the 17,448 square foot addition of 2014. That's certainly got a good wall height at 27 feet, but that's only 16% of the total area. Then you've got the second building. It's not in chronological order, but it's based on the order that the department has it in their records. 1976 built at 39,000 feet, 24-foot wall height, so that's certainly a decent wall height, much better than the 13 feet. That still, though, was an older structure, 1976, and represents 36% of the space. So, and then some smaller buildings as shown there. So, with the construction, the improvements built in those stages, 43% of course were constructed in '58, and 80% were constructed in 1976 or earlier. The land to building ratio here, as you see in the bottom paragraph, it's 2.92 to 1. Not particularly ideal, but that represents the motivation certainly for, and the owner did mention that they were certainly motivated to purchase both the sites adjacent to them with the view to having those sites in hand should they wish to expand further on the main site. So then, skipping to the crux of the issue, if we go to our page 10, so we have applied a slightly lower market rent, in this case of 4 1/4 a square foot to 105,292 square feet, representing the blended rate. And that then comes in at a total potential rent of 447,491. We've restored the non-recoverable expense allowance of 5%, as you see there, and capitalized at 8.30%. We come in at a suggested value of $4,428,000. Our market rent of 4 1/4, the comparables we're suggesting to this board are located at page 8. So at page 8, there are comparables listed in the middle of that page. The average is 456, the median is 435. Certainly with the significant proportion being the very low wall height of 13 feet, recall over 40% of the subject, we're suggesting it should be towards, not at the very low end, but towards the lower end of that range. Certainly, for instance, the Mission Street property of between 18 and 22 feet, that's the third comparable, 122,000 feet, January 16 lease at $4, with wall heights that are overall in a similar kind of range. The Fife comparable, that's about halfway down, that's actually the same comparable that the department's got in their brief. $4.50 a square foot for what I'm suggesting is a much superior building with a 31-foot wall height. And then you've got Sherwin Road, a larger comparable at 175,000 feet, that's the fourth from the bottom, larger than the subject, with a 19-foot wall height, so again, not ideal when you start talking about wall heights south of 20 feet, but that was only a 315 foot. So based upon the 4 1/4 rate, which we believe certainly falls both within the range of our comparables and the range of the comparable properties provided by the assessor, leaving out Redwood, that I'd suggest is far superior. We believe the 425 rate is fair and request the reduction to $4,428,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tang, any questions?
So for comparables, do you know the condition of these properties?
Sorry,
Like the condition?
I have not specifically been, certainly Fife Street I am familiar with, that's in very good condition. Mission Street I've been in as well, that's in good condition. You know, it's not new buildings, right, so these aren't 1990s constructed buildings. Let's actually see before I say that so quickly, the other ones I've been in. Furniture Park I have not been. I'll just go through them. Folks is in very good condition, that's also a newer building, that's the very bottom one. Kernahan I'm familiar with, it's in reasonable condition for its age. Fife I mentioned was in good condition. The others, Sherwin I don't believe I've been inside. At $315 a square foot, I'm gonna suggest that's in no better than average condition along with that wall height. And Inkster I haven't been in.
No.
That's it. Okay, thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
And I have no questions.
Mr. Pike?
Thank you.
So just in terms of your rental comps, which of these are gonna be closest in neighborhood?
I'm gonna suggest, so combination of age and wall heights and such, I've keyed on Mission Street, which is the third one.
Okay,
Fife, which is one we both have in, but I'd suggest it is much superior because notice there's a much higher wall height, but that's comparable in terms of size and age, but superior with wall height. And Sherwin Road, which is lower at 315 a foot and larger and older, so adjustments would have to be made, but it's also a 19-foot wall height, which also approximates the average wall height of the subject, so it'd be suggest those three.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any requirement for summation on this one? No? Okay. The final item on today's docket, 1981 Logan Avenue, when you're ready, please.
File number is 19-3782. Roll number is 0709101600. Address is 1981 Logan Avenue. The assessed value for 2020 is $545,000. Parcel use is INWWH warehouse. The effective year built is 1964. Zoning is M1 manufacturing light. Fund area is 9,000 square feet. Land to plan ratio is 1.67. We would like to make a recommendation for this property. We would like to use $4.14 per square foot, and that gives us $37,260 for potential rent. Then we use a vacancy of 6%, $3.75 for shortfall, 2% for expense, and that gives us $32,299. And then we use 7.7% coverage, and that gives us a total of $419,000.
419,
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Ryder? Okay, great, thank you. I'm assuming there's no questions from the panel on that one?
No question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that concludes this afternoon's hearing. Thank you both very much for your presentations.
Thank you all for your time.